Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Omnia Performance Podcast with myself, Fergus Crawley, and Kieran. Say hello.
Hello. Good to be here.
Concise. Oh, you added some. I didn't say hello. It's good to be here. Good grief. Anyway, today we are going to discuss all things heavier runners. Kieran, what's your current body weight?
About 89 kilos. Not quite Clydesdale, but it's definitely chunkier than Kipchoge.
That is true. I can't dispute that at all. I was actually going to back you up on the Clydesdale side of things, but I think chunkier than Chunkier than Kipchoge. There we go. That is a tongue twister. He's about 5'6" as well, isn't he, Kipchoge?
He's not big.
He's 6'4" in his race day shoes. I think it's the way it tends to go. But I have spent most of my quote-unquote hybrid athlete career at about 91 to 95 kilos. So I firmly do fit into the Clydesdale category. And it is not because of being 6'4" on race day. It is because I am larger than optimal for any of the sports that I choose to participate in, to be honest, as I am 5'11". Almost 6 foot. I'm half a centimetre off, which is unfortunate. But nonetheless, before we dive into today's conversation, which, as you can already gather, is going to be riveting and full of tongue twisters, like chunkier than Kipchoge. There we go. Nailed it. Cool. Cool. Didn't need prep into that one. Please do hit follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. Share this episode or an episode previously with a friend or a family member, your dog, even if they've got a Spotify account. The world is accelerating quickly. That might be a thing that can happen now. And do check us out on YouTube, as there is a big focus on the video component of this podcast, as this is available on video if you're listening. And if you are watching, hello. So we're going to do a bit of a game of tennis and go 1 point each. We've got 6 points total that we're going to cover off. And I will serve 2-in-1 shorts.
Essential.
That's pretty much it. Okay, first point done. No, so I think my first point for heavier runners is avoiding chafing. And that is actually the first of my 2 points on this exact topic, which is that, I grew up playing rugby, which means that I always went out in cold, wintry, horrible afternoons in Scotland with a pair of Under Armour undershorts beneath my rugby shorts. And that did me a world of good when spending time running with larger than optimal thighs at the time, because I was quite an overweight 13 to 15-year-old rugby player, and then I kind of found a more suitable body composition to play back row after that. But then it was ingrained in me that if you're going to get wet, if you're going to be running, if you're going to be sort of changing direction a lot, there's going to be risk of chafing. And a surefire way to accentuate said chafing is to not have any protection between the affected areas. So that's where a bit of a sort of frictionless material in the form of, I guess it's lycra, polyester, I'm not actually sure on the composition of the materials, but a slippery, undershorty material is very, very useful. And a lot of brands now make 2-in-1 shorts, which allows for that to happen. So your running shorts can be sort of giving you that bit of a bonus component before you even get running, which for me is essential. I will not run even indoors. I think any more than a K would probably. I regret
every time I try.
Yeah. You didn't use them. You've made that mistake.
I only recently came onto them, and I've either just suffered through or used longer shorts or just a bit of Vaseline. But yeah, 2-in-1 shorts, game changer.
There we go. I always think it's a really obvious point, but yeah, it's been completely great. I've never even considered anything else because of my rugby playing days. So yeah, I mean, if I used to wear them with jeans at uni when I was probably second and third year. If it was warmer, like term 3 at university, where it'd be a bit warmer, if I was on a night out in jeans or trousers, I'd wear undershorts, because if I was on my feet for a long time, I'd chafe. So I just wear undershorts as my boxers. Which yes. So this has been a problem I've been tackling for many, many years now. So yeah, whatever your favourite brand of running attire is, see if they do a pair of 2-in-1 shorts and give them a go, because it can really, really help with the friction. And ultimately, one of the main things with all sports really is if you reduce the friction to you taking part in said sport, then you will be able to enjoy it and therefore be able to build more consistently and over time make more progress. I honestly haven't found a brand or pair that I really, really swear by. There was an old pair that actually My Protein activewear of all places used to do that has served me well, and I've got about 8 pairs of them. I kind of recycle just because if it ain't broke, don't fix it sort of situation. There's a few from 247, a few old versions from Gymshark that I get on well with. I've got some from Lululemon, 1 pair from Arc'teryx that ended up actually not being very good, and a couple pairs from Decathlon, which are reasonable, but the waistband doesn't fit me as well. So, yeah, if anyone has any recommendations on the god tier 2-in-1 shorts, please do let me know, because I'm looking, and always will be, apparently.
Also listening.
Okay. Return serve, Kieran.
Load management. So important for heavier athletes. And what I mean by load is training load, not necessarily just body weight, but training load. So often running programs that you either buy off the shelf or you use from your favorite training app or certain apps that have become very popular, which shan't be named. Any of these are often designed for single discipline runners or people who aren't necessarily trying to improve their strength as well. And they're certainly likely not as heavy as potentially the people listening to here or those of us presenting. Now, what does that mean? It means that if you try and follow a lot of these programs, they're going to ramp up volume very quickly or quicker than you can manage. Now, obviously, the heavier you are, the more force there is going through each of your legs and your shins and your feet as you land. And it really is quite a problem, particularly for very heavy people. And we have to be a lot more careful, even when we're well conditioned. Even now, even though I'm a little bit leaner than I have been in the past, a lot of my best runs were at sort of 91 to 92 kilograms. I'm a bit lighter than that now. Even now, I still feel if I haven't ran much in a while, which I hadn't actually, I'm rebuilding my running volume, I feel it in my ankles. And it really does take a bit of time to build up slowly. So just don't take for granted that you are a bit heavier than a lot of other runners and that therefore you just have to be that little bit more careful. And a lot of off-the-shelf programs that aren't designed with you in mind are probably not going to take that into account. And they're likely not designed for you. So make sure that you're following something that takes into account, 1, your body weight, and 2, the extra strength work that you're doing, or most likely doing in order to be said heavier than usual body weight. So very important.
I think a good way to frame that is to imagine each stride as a repetition, and with each repetition, the more load that's going through it, the more cumulative load that equals. So 10K for each person is not the same in terms of cumulative load, and therefore the adjustment that is required for that person to become used to said cumulative load is important to bear in mind. And distance and volume and all these arbitrary metrics, well, they're not arbitrary, but all these principal metrics can become arbitrary when they don't take the bigger picture into account. So whilst we do have sort of training plans that are generally structured, they are structured as we are a company that specializes in strength and endurance training to factor in that additional body mass that comes from muscle mass or slightly higher body weight for utility in a strength sport. So I think it's important to take that into account rather than just view yourself as another runner, because generally speaking, runners will be of a lighter body weight and we are trying to tackle a different equation. Okay. What a shot, Kieran. Okay, let's see if I can return this. Chamois cream. You've mentioned Vaseline. Vaseline is bad for your clothes, and as we've already mentioned, an item of clothing, specifically 2-in-1 shorts, chamois cream is a much friendlier and sustainable in the sense of making sure that your shorts last you a long time. If you can't find ones that you love and you've got some that you love, you want them to last, don't you? So let's take a page out of... I've still got a little bit of illness in my breathing, actually. Sorry, everyone, if I sound like I'm a strong man walking down the corridor. I think I am still a little bit under the weather. But nonetheless, chamois cream is a road cycling phenomenon, and it is basically just a cream that reduces friction in certain areas, and specifically was designed to lather your chamois in your bib shorts so that you can feel nice and frictionless. But it just works well as a way of reducing that with running. So a little bit of application before any activity can help with making sure that you're comfortable and can therefore keep moving comfortably as you build your volume sustainably. So I have created 2 out of my 3 points to be friction focused, and I think that is important and quite telling as the biggest hurdle for me over the years to tackle. I think 2-in-1 shorts sort of paired with chamois cream is a combo that's quite difficult to compromise on. Where that can struggle, in experience, is when you're in sustained rainfall for a long period of time and the chamois cream is washed away and you need to deal with dampness in certain areas. That's where chafing can creep up on you, as I discovered whilst covering 250 kilometres from Edinburgh to Ben Nevis. But other than that, generally speaking, in any distance, any race, any training session, the pairing of 2-in-1 shorts with chamois cream when my legs have been at their biggest or at their smallest has always prevented me from bleeding or feeling a bit raw in areas that I would rather not feel that way in. So there we are. 2 chafing-related points. How creative of me.
Can really see where your struggles have been with this hybrid endeavour.
Yep. I have a lot of conversations on this. Maybe these might be the 2 most relatable points I've ever made. Please let us know in the comments, or drop us a message if 2-in-1 shorts have been a revelation for you, like they have been for Kieran, apparently. So on that note, Kieran, next revelation, please.
Very new for me. Yeah, so big one that, again, has been fairly new to my own training, probably the last sort of 2 to 3 years, is not being afraid of the low-impact modalities. Obviously, this is a conversation about heavier runners, not necessarily heavier triathletes, but there's still a huge amount of value that we can find, even if running's the focus, from allowing extra volume to come from things like the bike. The bike in particular, because it is the most relevant in terms of the speeds that your legs are moving at compared to, say, the rower or the ski erg or other modalities. But the bike in particular has such a profound effect on running, particularly if you are of the heavier nature, shall we say. And as we were saying, perhaps you're limited in how much you can increase your training load by every week. If, for example, you just don't handle certain mileage very well, I knew for a fact that once I start getting above, say, 50 kilometers a week, I really, really have to pay attention to my running there. It has to be a priority. But I can get the same cardiovascular benefit from lower volume or impact volume when I include the bike. And anecdotally, this season was my first racing season. I did a number of crit races, and off the back of the season and a huge amount of hard sessions on the bike, I was only running 2 or 3 times a week, and my 10K absolutely skyrocketed. On the lowest my running volume has been in, quite frankly, years. I was only running sort of 10 to 15K a week. I took 2 minutes off my 10K, took it from 39.30 to 37.10. Very, very profound and significant increase there, and a huge amount of that came down to the bike. So there we are. Point number 2 for me, don't be afraid of the low impact modalities, even if you are predominantly a runner.
Definitely. I think that's something I'm experiencing currently as well, is how good I feel reacclimatizing to running volume, having not done it in 14 weeks post-stress fracture. I feel absolutely rock solid aerobically. I feel a little bit rusty and alien musculoskeletally, which is to be expected. But in terms of efficiency, I'm already back to running half marathons at sub 5-minute K pace at 140 heart rate, because that aerobic conditioning has remained underlying. It's just the specificity of musculoskeletal adaptation that comes with actual specific running volume. But that begs the question, at what point does the threshold of enough musculoskeletal adaptation get ticked before you then start adding fatigue that could be acquired with less impact on the bike, which is a topic that we're going to discuss in more detail in our next podcast, Kieran. So we'll cease this discussion there. And encourage everybody at this point, if they haven't done so already, to hit follow or subscribe. Thank you very much. Cool. Nice. A firm exchange. Wonderful. My third and final point for the day is the importance of understanding your cadence and your gait and your stride and what we should be trying to avoid, because if we refer back to the point I made earlier about every stride being a repetition and that repetition carrying a certain amount of load impact through it, the transient impact that goes up through your body is significant. And most research indicates that the vast majority of running injuries don't come from heel striking inherently or a specific thing here or there. It tends to be from sort of 2 groupings and then other factors that sit around that, of course. You can't be completely direct. But generally speaking, the research indicates that overstriding is a significant cause of running injuries, and too aggressive spikes in volume is another significant cause. So the one that I'm going to focus on here is overstriding, because we've kind of touched on the volume side of things, make that sustainable, have a sensible plan that takes you into account, etc. But The chunky, spongy, comfortable shoes that we all get some performance benefits out of in this day and age allow us to disguise slightly inefficient movement. And that can mean that we can get away with overstriding where without so much cushioning, we would be getting sent feedback from the ground upwards that actually that impact is going up a little bit aggressively without being without flowing through a whole body. So if you imagine that you've got your shoulders, your hips, and your midfoot in line, you want the impact from your midfoot, the transient impact, to be going upwards towards your shoulders, so your full body is taking that impact. However, if your stride is out with and in front of that line, then all of that impact is going up the way through your foot, your shin, maybe towards your knee if you're sort of quite a long way out in front. But that's where shin splints, that's where, I mean, we're stretching a little bit, but that's where things like stress fractures in that region can come from, because there's much more load going through it than would be in a more efficient gait. But it can be easy to not realize that we're doing this. So I always recommend people to give a simple drill a go, which is in no shoes at all, on grass or a track, maybe not concrete, bit weird, but grass or track is a good place to start. If you just go for a little bit of a jog, either barefoot or in a pair of barefoot or very minimalist shoes, you will get feedback from your body if you are overstriding, because you'll be slamming your heel into the floor and you'll be feeling that impact go up through your shin and then nowhere else. Whereas if you feel that impact go up through your whole body, you'll feel a lot more floaty, you'll feel a lot more dynamic, and you'll feel a lot less heavy on your feet, in theory. So I think it's important to be aware of the impact of overstriding and being aware of manipulating our gait and adjusting our gait over time to be able to accommodate volume, because as volume increases, even if it's sustainable, if you are putting a lot of force, the transient impact up through your foot into your shins, that may accumulate into niggles, shin splints, other things further down the line. Whereas if we can make our gait a little bit more efficient and have it going up through our whole body, then that, in theory, allows for a more sustainable running progression towards whatever distance you may be covering. So be aware of overstriding. Don't inherently demonize heel striking, because you can essentially, with cushioning, land on your heel a little bit more predominantly than your midfoot. But the key detail is the alignment of your midfoot to your hips, to your shoulders, not the heel strike itself. So please bear that in mind. And film yourself on a treadmill, give the barefoot drill a go, or have somebody have a look at your gait and get a gait analysis if you can, because it's just good to know where you stand. But the important thing is to try not change lots of things at once. If you are implementing changes, implement them slowly but surely and try and focus on one thing per session. Things like skipping rope drills, banded drills can be great to try and drill this as well. And just something to always bear in mind is, imagine that you're jogging on the spot on your midfoot and then you actually start moving forward just by leaning forwards a little bit. That's a good way of encouraging yourself not to throw your leg out in front of you and hope for the best and let the cushioning do the work. Because whilst the cushioning can do the work and we can run well and quickly over time, if that impact is going nowhere rather than up through our entire body, then that could lead to some problems down the line. Kieran.
I think before I just move on to my last point, that point about the barefoot drill gave me a huge amount of benefit anecdotally. I did a lot of it during lockdown, just going out onto the fields, and it genuinely really changed my running. It was probably the most, obviously we were all running a lot more anyway, but that sort of 6-month period for me in 2020 was probably the most transformative for my running that I've ever had, outside of perhaps the drop in the 10K that I was just speaking about. It genuinely made such a massive difference for me. So definitely go try it out.
Nice. Cool. Final point.
And then the final point from me. So the idea that less is more. Now, you might think that's fairly similar to load management, but there's two subtle differences here. So when I'm talking about load management, I'm talking about slowly increasing your training volume. But that sentence alone doesn't necessarily tell you to cap it at a certain point. What I mean by less is more is that you don't have to keep incrementally increasing your training volume up to the same amount as most runners, particularly not if you're not a single discipline runner. You can get so much further than you might think off far fewer runs, particularly when averaged out across a long period of time. So I've been running for over a decade now. There have been periods where I've ran less than average and more than average, but across that period of about 12 years that I've been running, it averages out at roughly 3 runs a week. And I've got to where I have off no more than 3 runs a week. And none of the periods where I have been pushing running hard have ever seen me go above sort of 4 or 5 runs a week. I've never, ever really pushed things super hard. But because I've been doing it for a long time, I've managed to get to a point in running where I have quite respectable numbers. I'm very happy with my running. And quite frankly, I've gotten a lot further than I ever thought would have been possible at my current level of strength and body weight. If you'd have told me when I was powerlifting that I would be in touch of my powerlifting numbers on the deadlift, my deadlift right now is sort of 245, 250 kilograms conventional. If you'd have told me that I could hold on to that number whilst running the times I do now, I would not have believed you. But I've got to that point by just simply doing a lot less than you might imagine consistently for a long enough time period. And it all adds up. And it means that when you do less than you might imagine, you can then incorporate the strength work. And you can recover from it all, you can adapt to it all, and it all syncs nicely. Rather than trying to run 6 times a week, lift 6 times a week, throw this mash of huge amounts of volume together like so many people on Instagram do, and it just doesn't work for the average person with a life. So there we have it. Less is more.
Something Dr. Phil's hammered home over the years is that from his understanding of the research is that the best athlete is the one that can go the longest without getting a serious injury, because they are the ones that can build that cumulative moving average without big significant spikes or drops in that progress. So I think for me, I've gone a decade without a serious injury until this year. And whilst I definitely feel a bit rusty and there's a few things that I wouldn't just jump straight into, whereas I normally would if somebody said, hey, Fergus, come and run across Luxembourg for a YouTube video, I'd go, cool, let's plan it in. Whereas now I'd go, oh, you know what? I might need six weeks or more before I'm confident with that volume. So that's the first time in the past decade I've really had to think with that mindset, which just really hammers home that the best athlete is the one that is the most sustainable, because they are the ones that don't overspill their volume frequently. And I think, given that he has a PhD, a point well made, Kieran. I'd say we'll talk with him on that exact topic. But I think, a really good one to hammer home is that you can get away with a lot less than you think to achieve more. And there is nothing worse than quote unquote finishers or random mismatches or just jumping into this, jumping into that, jumping out of that from a hybrid training point of view to get in the way of making the most of the limited amount of time you can allocate to individual disciplines. So there we are. 6 things to consider if you are a heavier runner. Please don't forget to engage with the podcast in all of the ways that I've mentioned. Follow, subscribe, check us out on YouTube, etc., etc. Until next time, thank you very much.